From impeachments to inaugurations, if it's a political story, we are on the scene. The race for the White House is heating up.
We're beating Biden.
How dare he say that?
If it's breaking news, we're live with the latest coverage. From the White House, the State Department, and Capitol Hill, we know the issues, but above all, we know the players to bring you the latest in-depth analysis on all the key stories that we're covering. I'm Eric Ham. Join me from Washington here on Firstpost America. Hello and welcome to Firstpost America, your global pit stop for the latest news and headlines from the United States and around the world. I'm Eric Ham, coming to you live from the nation's capital in Washington, D.C. We'll get you a roundup of all the day's top stories, but first, let's take a look at the headlines. An Israeli drone strike in Lebanon kills at least 4 Hezbollah fighters. Israel's defense minister says the mission has not been completed against Hezbollah as tensions continue to escalate. Russia showcases new military hardware and nuclear-capable ballistic missiles in Victory Day parade. Vladimir Putin accuses the West of stoking conflicts across the world. Chinese President Xi Jinping and his wife arrive in Hungary. Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban lauds the long-standing friendship between Budapest and Beijing. Tech giant Microsoft to close down its Africa Development Center in the continent's most populous nation, Nigeria. At least 200 jobs at risk as the center closes after just 2 years of operations. And Australia to ramp up extraction and use of gas until 2050 and beyond. Despite global calls to phase out fossil fuels, Prime Minister Anthony Albanese says the move is needed to meet domestic demand. We begin with relations between Brazil and Israel. Brazil's criticism of Israel's war in Gaza has triggered a diplomatic breakdown between the two nations. In February, Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva called Israel's war in Gaza an act of genocide. In fact, President Lula went so far as to equate Israel's actions in Gaza with the Holocaust perpetuated by Adolf Hitler on the Jewish community during World War II. Now, despite this harsh criticism, President Lula's administration has decided to go ahead with a weapons deal with Israel. In fact, the Brazilian army has selected the Israeli Atmos 2000 self-propelled howitzer to meet its needs, $190 million, and would give a major boost to Israel's military-industrial complex. Now, Brazil is not the only nation that has criticized Israel for the war in Gaza and then followed it up with a weapons deal. Australia, too, has been vocal against Israel and its Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. In fact, Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has repeatedly said that he does not support Israel's actions in Gaza.
We've said very clearly, and the Foreign Minister has said, that we do not support the intervention into Rafah, that we're concerned about the humanitarian impact. Palestinians were told to move south in Gaza towards Rafah. We want there to be a sustainable ceasefire. We want the hostages should be released immediately and unconditionally. That should occur. There is no role for Hamas to play in the future of Gaza, but we also very clearly support a two-state solution along with our like-minded countries.
Now, Canberra has been vocal against Israel's military action since the beginning of the year. However, just like Brazil, Australia too has awarded a weapons contract to Israel. Now, Israel will provide Australia with over 100 infantry fighting vehicles and air defense systems similar to that of Israel's Iron Dome. Now, Brazilian President Lula and Australian Prime Minister Albanese are facing criticism for failing to uphold moral values by purchasing Israeli weapons systems. Meanwhile, as Israel's war machine expands deeper into Rafah, the United States has doubled down on pulling the plug on supporting Israel. President Biden spoke to Prime Minister Netanyahu and warned him of completely halting deliveries of American weapons if Israel in fact does not adhere to Washington's demands on safeguarding civilian lives in Rafah. However, U.S. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin clarified that Israel will continue to get American support to defend itself against any future attacks.
And so we're going to continue to do what's necessary to ensure that Israel has the means to defend itself. But that said, we are currently reviewing some near-term security assistance shipments in the context of unfolding events in Rafah.
Now, with the lives of over 1 million Palestinians at stake, it's Israel that could be left isolated as its biggest weapons supplier could be pulling the plug on military aid. Now, it's unclear where that leaves nations that depend on Israel for weapons, but if Biden follows through on this threat, it leaves Netanyahu out in the cold. And now moving to the war in Europe, Russian missiles and drones struck nearly a dozen power facilities in Ukraine last night. The aerial onslaught, which is the largest in weeks, comes 2 days after Vladimir Putin was sworn in as Russia's president for the 5th time. Kyiv says the airstrikes caused serious damage to 3 Soviet-era thermal power plants, resulting in blackouts in multiple regions. And at least 3 people were also injured, including an 8-year-old child. According to Ukraine's Air Force, Russia used 76 air attack weapons in the latest assault. This included 55 missiles and 21 drones launched from Russia and Russian-controlled areas. Now, the latest attack puts more pressure on Ukraine's energy system more than 2 years after Russia launched its full-scale invasion. Following the strikes, Ukraine's power grid operator said it was forced to introduce power cuts in 9 different regions. President Volodymyr Zelensky said that Russia deliberately launched the attacks on the day Ukraine celebrated the Day of Remembrance, honoring the victory over the Nazis and World War II.
Life itself was the target that night, just like during hundreds of other similar nights and days of this war. For everyone in the world who really sees reality and has the courage not to close their eyes, it is obvious that the Russian state is fighting not only against our Ukrainian independence, not only against our state, but against everything that gives life to the state and people.
Now, Moscow said it struck Ukraine's military-industrial complex and energy facilities in retaliation to Kyiv strikes on Russia's power grid. The ongoing offensives and counteroffensives have also put pressure on Ukraine's economy. In fact, a recent study says that the total cost of rebuilding stands at nearly $500 billion and climbing. Ukraine says it has suffered losses so significant that even imports of power from Europe will not cover the shortage. Now, as Russia continues to paralyze Ukraine's energy infrastructure and the war shows no signs of ending, and the situation for Kyiv is only going from bad to really, really worse. And here in the United States, former President Donald Trump has a new plan to tackle America's growing fentanyl crisis. If reelected, the presumptive Republican nominee reportedly wants to send kill squads into Mexico to eliminate leaders of drug cartels. Reports say Donald Trump wants to do this with or without the consent of the Mexican government. However, U.S. military experts warn against attacking Mexico, saying that this would have limited impact on the drug trade and harm diplomatic ties between the two neighbors. Our next report explains more of Donald Trump's hit squad and what it means for Mexico and U.S.-Mexico relations.
Another day, another controversy swirling around former U.S. President Donald Trump. The presumptive Republican nominee wants to tackle America's growing fentanyl crisis by waging a war. Trump reportedly plans to send assassination squads into Mexico to kill the leaders of drug cartels. That is if he is reelected to the White House. According to reports, the 77-year-old believes that the U.S. military has tougher killers than Mexican troops. and they can be used against the criminal gangs fueling the drug crisis in his country. Once rarely used outside hospitals, fentanyl has become a street drug across the U.S. It is made by gangs, often in Mexico, from cheap chemicals usually manufactured in China. Some 70,000 Americans lost their lives due to the overdose of the drug in 2023 alone. Now, Trump is yet to announce the full extent of his plans to combat the drug emergency. However, the plan reportedly involves deploying special U.S. forces with or without the Mexican government's consent. Reports say Trump hasn't discussed specific details such as how many American troops would be sent into Mexican territory. But he argues that killing the kingpins of the most powerful cartels would seriously damage their ability to supply drugs to America. Trump has even wondered why similar hits have not been carried out by the U.S. government before. The former president believes that the U.S. should have a quote-unquote kill list of drug lords, which would be assigned to the assassination squads to kill or capture. He has even compared his plan to the U.S. military raid he ordered in 2019, which resulted in the death of ISIS leader Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi. Trump, who is on a campaign trail ahead of November's presidential election, has vowed to crack down on drug cartels in his 2024 policy proposals. Trump says he would order the U.S. Defense Department to make appropriate use of special forces, cyber warfare, and other overt and covert actions to inflict maximum damage on cartel leadership, infrastructure, and operations. Now, the idea of military action in Mexico is not just being floated by Trump. It appears to have growing appeal among other Republican politicians. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis says that he would order special forces to enter Mexico on day one if he were ever the president. Last year, Republican Senators Lindsey Graham and John Neely backed a legislation that would give the military the authority to go after the drug cartels wherever they exist. This proposal was denounced by Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador as an offense to the people of Mexico. Meanwhile, U.S. military experts warn against attacks in Mexico, saying this would have limited impact on the drug trade and harm diplomatic ties between the two nations. Last year, General Mark Milley, the former chairman of the U.S. military's Joint Chiefs of Staff, said that invading Mexico was a bad idea. But will that stop the former president from waging war against Mexico's drug cartels if Trump makes a return to the White House?
And shifting focus to Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman's dream project, the Neom city, last month Saudi Arabia explored options of fundraising as it faced a cash crunch to build the mega city. Now, a former intelligence officer of Saudi Arabia has made shocking allegations against Riyadh, which include the use of force to evict people to make way for Neom. According to reports, Saudi Arabia has authorized its forces to crack down on any villages that protest the relocation. The former Saudi colonel claims that he was tasked with relocating villagers in a region which was on the end of Neom city. And the officer says that tribes began protesting over news of relocation as they inhabited the region for generations. The protests then turned violent, leading Saudi Arabia's forces to put an end to demonstrations. The retired Saudi colonel, who is now based in the United Kingdom, claims that one of the tribe members was actually shot dead in the scuffle. And the officer added that Saudi government supported the troops who took action against the protest. Meanwhile, Saudi Arabia's government says that the tribes opened fire first and the death happened when its troops acted in self-defense. There's also reports of Riyadh detaining tribe members who protested against relocation as their land was in fact taken away. In fact, some of the armed protesters were eventually turned rebels and given harsh sentences, including the death penalty, by the Saudi government. Now, Saudi activists have appealed the decision and taken the case to Saudi Arabia's Supreme Court. And the Saudi kingdom has been facing intense backlash from various tribes over Neom due to forced relocation. And according to government figures, over 6,000 people have been moved around to accommodate the mega desert project. Now, Neom City remains the centerpiece of Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman's ambitious program called Saudi Vision 2030. The futuristic mega project is touted to be 33 times the size of New York City and will have a combination of modern skyscrapers and traditional palaces. Staying in the Middle East, the most unexpected crossover of the year has happened in Egypt. Bollywood is shaking hands with Egyptian politics in the most unexpected way. Egyptians are claiming India has cloned their late president, Hosni Mubarak. And caught in the middle of this row is an Indian singer. Our final report explains this bizarre soap opera playing out between the two nations.
The magic of Bollywood transcends borders. It's no surprise that its influence is felt even in the vibrant lands of the Middle East. From heartwarming family sagas to epic love stories drenched in melodrama, Bollywood captures the hearts of audiences far and wide. And let's not forget the infectious beats of Bollywood music, which have garnered a dedicated and significant fan base over the years. Icons like Lata Mangeshkar, Mohammad Rafi and A.R. Rahman have a global fan following. But now there's a new sensation in Egypt, Abhijeet Bhattacharya. Bhattacharya is renowned for his mesmerizing voice and countless hits in nearly 1,000 films. Bhattacharya has recently found himself thrust into the spotlight in an unexpected way. He has become Egypt's talk of the town, but the reason behind his newfound fame is as unexpected as it can get. It's not his angelic voice or chart-topping melodies that have Egyptians buzzing, but brace yourselves, because Abhijeet Bhattacharya is being hailed as the doppelganger of the late Egyptian President Hosni Mubarak. Yes, you heard that right. With his square facial features, prominent forehead and signature hairstyle, Bhattacharya has unwittingly become Mubarak's lookalike. Social media platforms are abuzz with comments from astonished Egyptians. Some even going as far as to claim that India somehow cloned their former leader. But Bhattacharya himself was caught off guard by the sudden attention. At first, he thought he was being bombarded with spam messages until his children told him about his newfound stardom in Egypt. He's been flooded with invitations from Egypt, including one to inaugurate a restaurant. It's a far cry from his usual backstage persona. And how does he feel about this curious twist of fate? Well, he's taking it all in his stride. Bhattacharya can't help but feel honored by the recognition. Taking to Instagram, he shared his delight at going viral in Egypt. He posted a snapshot of himself alongside Egypt's late President Mubarak, with a caption that echoes the sentiment of his 1994 hit, "We both are different and unique." Abhijeet Bhattacharya's unexpected rise to fame in Egypt is a reminder of the global reach and influence of Bollywood. The world of entertainment continues to surprise and delight audiences across borders. In the ever-evolving landscape of cultural exchange, the magic of Bollywood knows no bounds.
That's our show for today. We certainly thank you so much for tuning in. We hope to see you right back here again tomorrow. Thanks again for watching. From impeachments to inaugurations, if it's a political story, we are on the scene. The race for the White House is heating up.
We're beating Biden. How dare he say that?
If it's breaking news, we're live with the latest coverage. From the White House, the State Department, and Capitol Hill, we know the issues, but above all, we know the players to bring you the latest in-depth analysis on all the key stories that we're covering. I'm Eric Ham. Join me from Washington here on Firstpost America.